I think that Dawkins going down the like Peterson route is like I think that he is going to try it. It's just that he like okay, this is the main thing, right? He's 20 years older than Jordan Peterson, right? And he's already had his big like rise to fame, his book tour, his everything. Like, you know, his however many books he's done. He's done his like bigoted stint hating Muslims and indigenous people, and now onto trans people. And it's like, yeah, it's very clear the money is there for him to try and do like more of the fast shit. He was so the thing I was reading, he was in the New Statesman. They'd gotten him and they'd gotten someone else, and they were like, we're gonna solve the gender issue with a debate, and Richard Dawkins is gonna be really, really bigoted, and then someone else is gonna have mild feminist opinions. You know, the debate. And it's like, if he's getting a booking as the bigot in some like, you know, he's the heel in their wrestling match, right?
I do often forget how old he is. He is like in his 80s now.
80s.
You know?
I mean,
like,
the good news about that though is that if he starts the all meat diet, there's no fucking way
it's
that
taking him
liver
out.
is game over.
And I feel like even as he gets older, as he probably, you know, as he knows like the grift is like running dry or whatever, I feel like he's starting like these like combination bigotry kind of things. It's like because he is like, you know, he's doing the trans thing at the moment, but he is actually, you know, he has been on a very anti-Maori thing for a while now, and it's really wild to see him just get involved in a discussion that he like. I mean, it's not that wild to see him get involved in a discussion he has absolutely no idea about, but
it's kind of his
like
thing. Yeah,
it's like this weird thing where it's like he pops up every now and then and has this like really intense opinion, but then like doesn't back it up with anything, or doesn't actually, you know, he's not actually having a discussion or anything like that. So his like there's a lot of speculation on because he seems to be taking kind of pot shots at specific like New Zealand universities and stuff, and it seems like, you know, there's definitely like some kind of like agenda there or something like that. I would be surprised if it was just someone else that is like kind of whispering in his ear every now and then, like, hey grandpa, you want to hear something fucked up? Yeah, you should tweet about it right now. And then just completely like, you know, just you know what would be the
worst vibe is trying to fix your car, and then Richard Dawkins walks by. And he would because he would immediately come over. He's like, I can see that you haven't educated yourself on this at all. Science says that an engine should go to get and just involve himself and like talk down to you.
No, he would be he would definitely do like the classic kind of like, you know, that thing where people don't like they assume that they have that natural intelligence where it's like, I can look at this for 5 minutes and I'll be able to
I can figure this out. Exactly. Car mechanics are dumber than me. I don't have I have a PhD and they don't, so I must be able to figure this out.
Exactly, that kind of thing.
Trying to explain I'm trying to explain to him that I've got an electric car while he insists that cars have always taken petrol, so it must take petrol. Anyway, welcome to Red Planet.
Welcome to Red Planet. You know, Richard Dawkins has just popped by to tell us that our transmission's fucked. So how are we doing, everyone? We're doing good. It's been a couple weeks since I've been here, so I've missed out on all of the
It's my second week back from my working too hard hiatus. Which is not at all like a holiday. It's where I'm working too hard on something else, so I'm not here, and then I come back tired. But here's my question for Mule: what's the most base thing you did this week?
Well, Sophie, I'm surprised you're asking me this, because the most base thing I did this week was have you on my stream. And I know that this isn't really any activism related stuff, but I think it is to a point because, well, look, you know, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I haven't actually done any extraneous activism this week. I have been still recovering from my fatigue, but I'm feeling so much better now. But the reason I wanted to mention talking about your video is because it truly is, and I cannot stress this enough, the launching point for how we now discuss politics on the internet, at least, you know what I mean? if not the broader
thanks, babe. That's really sweet.
Well, you know, we spoke about this like sort of really briefly on the stream that we did together, where it's like, well, you know, now, you know, and we talk about this on Red Planet all the time. We know that the only way forward is communism. And if
Yeah.
you don't want to call it communism, a world that is full of love and compassion for your fellow human.
Yeah. Well, like the communist kind of like mode of production, like the communist relation.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean, I know what you mean. Absolutely. Like, it's like either you're, admittedly, the majority of people are still being doomers or whatever else the fuck they're doing, but like either you're getting on with what we're gonna do next, or you're just fucking around, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And it has inspired me in like all the conversations I've had with people this week to challenge them to think of a life after capitalism, like a world after capitalism. Like, you know, how do you envision the world? And it kind of, it got me thinking. And you saw this tweet that I did because you liked it. I don't know if you remember, but I was saying like, yeah, it kind of like strikes me that like, you know, the 60% of jobs in the world that are like bullshit jobs. They you know, they serve money, they serve finance, like debt collectors, banks, like sales jobs. Literally David Graeber moment, even though I've never read him. And it's honestly like, you know, if everyone who works in those kinds of jobs, so like everybody in the Imperial Corps, like, you know, stop working and we slow down production so much because, you know, we still produce even in the Imperial periphery where we export all of our labor. You know, we slow down production like to the point where, you know, we're not harming the planet. Like, just how much of a wonderful world that would be, because it would give everybody the time to learn the skills necessary to, like, if they wanted to, you know, do medicine or, you know, care for disabled people or all these different things. And it's just like things that I've never really thought of in the grander scheme of things, with understanding how everything works in the world and capitalism is related and stuff. Now I can sort of like really easily visualize them. So it's definitely helped me, and I think it's going to help everybody. I think it's
thanks, babe.
We're already seeing that. So that was the most base thing I did this week.
Thanks. I do think it's like I think it's like you know, being able to imagine different paths to whatever's going to happen next is really important. Like what you're saying there about like, if all those people doing bullshit jobs just slowed the fuck down, that would be a huge change. If all of them, like, as a 1-2 step, like stop paying rent and then stop working, you know, that would be so much. Sometimes I feel like, because I take it as the premise of my politics, what's going to happen, it feels like a huge trap card in political conversations with me, that I'm not coming into every conversation like the world is not ending, let me tell you why. But I'm talking with that, I know I believe that. And I feel like eventually it's going to wind down to them being like, but don't you think? And I'll be like, aha. Tim, what was the most basic thing you did this week?
I was trying to think about this before the show because I just got back like halfway through last week and had to take time off to kind of sleep, and popped into work for a couple days. So I haven't had too much time. The one thing I would probably say, which is like something that I think I've mentioned it like once or twice before, is like a thing that happens sometimes at work as a tattoo artist, is I had this customer that she's like a regular customer, and I've tattooed her a whole bunch, and she had a specific kind of like body kind of like dysmorphia kind of like issue sort of thing, and we did some tattoos kind of like around this kind of like thing in her body that she was like really kind of that she just really hated and like made her feel really, you know, weird or whatever like that. And and then so afterwards she was like super psyched, and then she like messaged me afterwards and was like, I'm so happy, like this is like, you know, like I'm like so stoked, you know, just all this kind of stuff, saying
That's
like
so
I'm just
sweet.
like,
I love that.
you know, this has like changed the way that I like look at myself and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's pretty base, that's pretty cool. That's like the coolest thing I can think of in the last like couple weeks or so. And yeah, it's like one of those things that really like you know, like when you get reminded of like the good things about why you do what you do and stuff, you know, when you have like really good interaction like that, and it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, sure, there's a lot of just like tattooing sick flaming skulls on people because it's sick, but then there is like, you know, there is like a transformational kind of aspect for a lot of people, and it kind of like, you know, helps them with their
I've been saying for a while, like whenever I eventually visit your neck of the woods, I should get you should do me a tattoo. Now I really want a flaming skull. Like it's such a like Generic rad tattoo idea.
Yeah, it's like my go-to for whenever like someone like wants to talk about like a like a pretty hectic tattoo or whatever. Like some people will be like,
Yeah.
they'll be getting like a little bouquet of flowers or something, and they'll be like, oh, like my mom might be upset, and it's like, hey, at least it's not a flaming skull. But a flaming skull is like, it's sick as hell. There's like a bunch of things like flaming skull, like a panther, whatever. Like it's always going to be sick as hell. Like you can't go wrong with that. A big dagger. All of the above.
A flaming dagger. Maybe a skull who's holding a flaming dagger in his teeth.
A skull with a flaming dagger going through it.
Yeah. It's something like a panther with a dagger, the panther's head with a dagger going through it. There's like a skull in the panther's mouth. That's like, that's a consolidated tattoo.
There we go. And it's all on fire.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always on fire and spraying blood and stuff. But so that's what I thought. What about you, Soph? What's the most base thing you've done this week?
It's been a big week for rock climbing. I've posted a lot of rock climbing on my Twitter.
No base jumping.
If I'd done it, that would have been a great joke for me to make.
Yeah. You just gotta climb the rock and then jump off, and then
I mean, I do jump off it because a lot of them it's too hard to climb down. Climbing down is a lot harder.
True.
But I was gonna say, like I've been posting some videos from my rock climbing adventures, indoor rock climbing to be clear, not proper adventures, the last few weeks, and like people interact with them as thirst traps. Like the honest to God reason why I started recording in the first place is like to watch my form, because it's like I care about this. Like I haven't found like a form of exercise that I like care about and enjoy this much before, and like it's really. Yeah, it's like really hard.
It's good to find that, right? Like
it's been really hard for me to get out of the house regularly and like with the pointed goal of working out. Like I used to just lift weights, and then I like really changed what shape I was aiming my body at being, and realized I wanted like much different things, right? So I started just doing squats and like indoor cycling. But like nothing that would get me out of the house and like had the real big endorphin hit of like going somewhere, using your body, feeling like a person who's out there in the world, and rock climbing is it. I fucking love it. Like it's so good.
So many people I know are getting into it now. It's like it does seem like it's very like engaging.
The next time you're up here, we got to go climbing together because I love rock climbing too. Yeah,
okay, fantastic. Yeah.
I gave it a go years ago, but I really want to try it out again, and now this is getting me hyped up about it. So
I have my carabiner and belaying device on my keyring at all times.
Is that your rock climbing carabiner or your lesbian carabiner?
It's both, of course. I'm an eminently practical doll, so I like having the belaying device around and just being like, well, if anyone is climbing a tall building and is attached to a rope and the rope is going through a pulley, but the other end isn't secured to anything, I can go, don't worry, everyone. I can belay.
I thought you were going to say, don't worry, everyone. I'm a lesbian.
I can say the same.
That would be better. That would be so much better. Yeah.
Anyway, this week specifically, I have been bouldering 4 whole times, which is the most I've done in a week before.
At least we get that bouldering is like that's like when it's not at like a climbing wall, right? That's just when it's just a big rock somewhere.
No. It is at the rock climbing wall, but it's no rope. So it's a shorter,
right. So it's just free handed because it just sounds like it's like bouldering to me just sounds like cottaging or dogging or something,
that too, right? Again, this is a deeply lesbian sport.
I feel like there's totally like there could be like a crossover there somewhere, we need a new term for like all of the above. Like
I'm very glad that the like premier trans lesbian cruising spot is also a place where you do a lot of like exercise that's good for you. I'm really glad for that because it like fully that's why I was like, I'm gonna make some friends. And then I was like, shit, damn, I like exercising. I like using my body. This rules. Anyway, this week I went bouldering 4 times, and I really like worked out super hard every time. I know like working out to exhaustion is actually bad for you and is not part of a good training thing, and like usually when I go twice a week, I haven't done that. But a couple of times I was like just so beat coming out of this, and like it. While it's not a good thing that you shouldn't do regularly, doing it like working out until you are absolutely completely fucked. It's like if you haven't done it in a long time, it's a great feeling because it's just like I've actually pushed my body to a point here. Like I've really shown what my limits are.
And as long as you like make the moves to recover, it's better. Like make sure you're getting like your nutrients and stuff like that in the food you eat after and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and also like, you know, taking care of yourself beforehand and stuff. But yeah, no, that feeling when you like it I feel like there is kind of a you know, there's like a zone where you get into where you're just like no thoughts, like head empty, just focusing on the goal.
Yeah, and when I go rock climbing too,
yeah. When it's like, okay, I'm finishing the, you know, like I'm climbing up here, or I'm like finishing this set, or I'm like hitting this, you know, whatever like that.
Yeah, totally.
I think can be a really good like kind of almost like a mind cleanse, like just like
100%.
like flush it all
There's
out.
like I don't know if these numbers will be meaningful to any viewers or listeners, but like I've been at the sort of top end. Like I've been doing all of the V2 bouldering routes for a while, and I've been trying to break into V3s. And for people who don't climb, it's like the way that at least where I climb, like this is organized, is like V0 is it's kind of like a wonky ladder of holds, and then 1 and 2s it's kind of like they'll either be like steps missing from the ladder, or it's a little bit more of a puzzle. But V3 is kind of where it really kicks off, is like you have to do some bizarre gymnast shit. You gotta be like sideways and then like use your ankle to like turn your whole body around. Like that's where it really kicks
so
off.
hard. It's so fucking hard.
So I've got like a few V3 routes I can do now. So I'm like starting to break into that. And that's kind of why this week has been so intense with it, because I've just like got the autism for rock climbing big time this week.
The hyper focus.
I mean that's been the most basic thing I did this week, because honestly, like just taking care of myself, it's good. So the news this week on sorry, there was one more thing before we do that. But those are the most base things we did this week. However, we want to know what base things you've been doing. So you can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if you're cool with that, and we may shout it out in a later episode.
I did see a couple quick ones in the chat. I just want to point out real quick. We got B-Rat was helping out with some flood damage cleanup after they had the worst flood in 3 decades.
Cool.
And there was another one, Raven G3226. Signed up to work at the food bank and then found out that they're actually going to get paid for it too. So that's awesome to go in there. You know, so nice, great work team. But yeah, if you do have anything else, just shoot it through to us and we'll do a little proper thing next week.
So this week's going to be a bit of a strange episode, everyone, which is why we've been kind of just chatting so far. We have a guest coming on for a little discussion now, roughly half an hour, maybe a bit longer, and then we're going to do just a few news sections afterwards. The guest who's coming on is a representative of Sarah Jane Baker. So if people don't know, Sarah Jane Baker is a trans woman who was a prisoner for a long time, and she has been an activist since she got out. She transitioned while she was inside, and she's been an activist since she came out. And she was recently re-imprisoned because she said that people should punch TERFs in the face. A lot of left-leaning news places aren't really talking about this, and I think that this is frankly some moral cowardice, because they're shying away from talking about a woman whose original conviction they feel makes her not worthy of like basic human decency and respect. But it is a problem that our like speech is so limited in discussing like this exterminationist movement who are trying to kill us, and we can't say anything back. And it's also a problem that the government can basically just like re-imprison on very little grounds any prisoner who's currently under the conditions that they've set. Those are 2 huge problems that matter to politics, no matter who they're being done to. So we're getting an update from Anita, who has joined us now. Anita? Are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So you're I was just filling in the chat a bit on kind of Sarah, the broad strokes of what's going on with Sarah. But there's been kind of specific developments recently that you maybe could tell us more about.
Yeah, so I mean, she had quite a stressful week last week for quite a lot of different reasons. So she was meant to be in court on Thursday, and somehow it was just a complete farce. They were meant to have got her over in transport. Her name wasn't on the list, and then there was no video link. So they ended up being, discussing her without her actually being in court at all.
Oh my God.
Which was,
That's disgusting.
yeah, which, you just are saying, like, you think these people have got so much power and they're so educated, and yet they can't manage that level of basics. So there was another date scheduled then on the 22nd because the Crown had actually wanted to put a second charge. So she was charged with a Section 4A. I'm not a legal person, so this is just kind of a layperson's description. So the 4A was about causing alarm and distress, and they want to put another charge of saying encouraging someone else to do criminal behaviour, basically.
Right. Okay.
But they couldn't actually do it because she wasn't in court, so they've had to schedule an additional day. So there was that, and then Pink News were really supportive and did an article and interviewed some of the people that were at the demo there. So yeah, we've been doing demos outside the court every time, and the conditions in the jail have been really bad. She's a trans woman in a men's jail, had been put on a wing with lots of sex offenders, saying she's being inappropriately touched, just having transphobic comments all the time, not being able to shower because they won't let her shower separately, and, people not doing suicide watches when they should do because they say that they don't have time, that kind of thing. So, so I was telling Pink News this because I think people should know, about what the conditions are in jail. And subsequent to that, she was like threatened, is what she told me, by someone in the jail, saying that she shouldn't talk to the press, which she hadn't, I was taken to the press. I think she was just so fed up of being in a men's jail and feeling that, the way that the rules are now, the chances of her being transferred to a female jail seem like they're really slim. So she went on a hunger strike. And yesterday I was really, really worried because she was saying she was refusing liquids as well. And actually today she's said she's actually stopped that hunger strike now because she was told that if she didn't stop after 10 days, they would start force feeding her. I feel really mixed on that, but obviously I'm really relieved that she's eating and drinking and about her physical health. But at the same time, my understanding is generally people shouldn't be force fed on hunger strike. And I think people tend to hunger strike because they've got so little kind of ability to have control over their lives and to be able to actually protest about what's happening to them. So it's just really grim, I suppose, that she's in that situation where she's got so little control over what's going on. I think she's moved on to a different floor now because she was under observation, and now hopefully she'll be at least not in exactly the same place as she was before. But yeah, so those were the sorts of things that were happening. I can talk on, but I don't know if you've got specific things.
One thing I'm wondering is if you're aware of activist groups like the Prisoner Solidarity Network, because you were talking about some of the conditions, and we interviewed them a while ago on the show, and they were talking to us about the conditions in British prisons. recently, and I don't know if they might be of any help to Sarah in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they will be. I think there might be some people involved in that who are involved in the campaign, although Prison Solidarity Network as such hasn't, haven't been involved at the moment. But yeah, we're still kind of building everything up. It's been really, really hectic. So I'm definitely wanting to reach out to whatever groups, quite broadly, really, in terms of supporting the campaign, because I think it's a basic human rights issue, and there's also issues about freedom of speech, freedom to protest, about prisoners' rights, as well as obviously trans rights. So I think it's actually really broad, and there's a lot of people that should be supporting this for all of those reasons.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was just saying before you came on, like I think that there's people shying away from offering like outright support for her because, and I personally think that it's a moral cowardice because this is an issue that, as you say, is so broad and like you were just saying about her hunger strike. You know that they threatened to force feed her and she had to end the hunger strike, right? That's like force feeding is torture. Like that's not like them being so comfortable to deploy this. Like it's shocking. Like there are so many layered problems here that people should be really, really angry about and should be talking about and shouldn't be just worried that some reactionary will say, well, she did a crime before, so she's not a person and doesn't deserve human rights.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean,
what like I don't you go on.
no, I was just going to say on the issue of, previous crimes, it's like she was in for 30 years, and those crimes were 30 years ago. And I feel like it's as though people that are on license that have committed crimes before are kind of held to a higher standard than just other people. And like a lot of people that are on license have had, huge amounts of people have got mental health conditions, have had traumatic things that have happened in their past. So all sorts of reasons that can actually make it more difficult, and, certainly in terms of the speech that she made, I mean, that was something done in the moment, on impulse. And she's still adjusting to life on the outside, because when someone's been in jail, it seems like it's a whole different set of rules, a whole different society, and you're cut off from everybody, and what is expected of you out in the outside world is really quite different. And yet people are held up to, expected to behave better than anybody else, with very little support.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. I didn't know the term on license, but yeah, that's another thing I was saying about this issue is like yeah, there being a class of people who have just a completely separate relationship to the law. This is another compounded issue. Like we can't just have some people could just like some people can have full access to freedom of speech, and some people can make a like somewhat careless remark or like, well, have a higher burden is the point. Like the rules are much tighter on them and they might not even be aware of them, and then break them and then go straight back to prison immediately. But moreover, Sarah's parole officer was not actually pursuing this, right? And then the Home Office stepped in response to like transphobes on Twitter calling for her to be arrested and made this happen. That's, I think, a huge part of this story that we should be focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it kind of goes to show how somebody else would have been treated as well. So the initial response from the police was no further action needed to be taken. And she actually initiated a meeting with her probation because she thought it might be an issue. And, we've got it in writing. We've got a letter in writing, headed at the top, decision not to recall. Yeah, they did have issues with what she said, but on the whole, she'd been doing really well, not had any recent warnings. They felt that any risk she posed could be managed in the community, that she didn't need to go to jail. And all of that was in writing. And yet both agencies, both the police and probation, changed their mind like 48 hours later. So yeah, I mean, I can't see it as anything other than this is political influence.
Which makes her a political prisoner.
Yeah, because I don't think somebody else, they would not have been imprisoned for this. And you could say, oh, well, she was on license or whatever, but at the end of the day, if she hadn't have said what she said, she wouldn't be in prison. And that's the reason she's in prison. And other people wouldn't have been if it wasn't for the political background. And it just seems wrong to me that, a Home Secretary can send a tweet and that has such a huge influence over agencies that are supposed to be separate from ministers. They're supposed to be independently assessing these things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite clearly like such an overreach of state power. And we're seeing this in so many different avenues of like politicized sort of like discussion. Like we're seeing it with climate activists, we're seeing it with like obviously with Sarah Jane Baker, and it's just like this vile environment. It's a hostile environment to anyone who stands up to systemic injustices, right? Whether it's climate injustice, whether it's injustice from lack of healthcare for trans people, lack of protection for trans people, and it's like, it's just everything that Sophie said and you've said is just, I can't really say anything better, to be honest. It's literally like everybody should be so disgusted by this. And again, like, it is that people are afraid to jump into things such as prison abolition, and the idea that like someone can have done something in the past that may have been bad or whatever, but that was such a long time ago. It has no bearing on a person's development or story or whatever, or like what they're doing now or like what they're saying now.
Well, I especially think that us on the left, right? Like Eugene Debs said, while there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there is a working class, I am in it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free. And I just think that like this, I just can't find different words to describe it than moral cowardice. I think that people should be outraged, and I think people should be talking about this. And I'm glad to hear that Pink News has been supportive, but we need better than this. We need much, much more. Besides media outlets doing more and covering it more, what can average people do to help Sarah?
Yeah, so we're trying to set up as much as we can. There's lots of things people can do. So we're having demonstrations outside every time that there's a court on. So the next demo is on Tuesday, the 22nd at 10 a.m. at Westminster Magistrates Court. And then for her trial, she's going to be at the City of London Magistrates Court. And again, we'll be there from 10 a.m. We've got an email address. People can send messages of support. That's really important because she is obviously feeling isolated and really appreciates everybody's support. We've got several social media channels which people can share things. If people do have contacts with the press, please do put us in touch and help us that way. And we're planning future events. So expecting there to be an event probably beginning of October. There's people in Brighton that have set something up for the 3rd of September. I think people in Bristol are planning something as well. So it's not just London people, if people have got groups around the country that are able to put things on, that's all good. She's got a poetry book coming out, which will be available at the demo on the 31st. So doing poetry readings, sharing news of that. And just if people have got ideas, like there's a lot of people that are artists, photographers, and people with different creative skills. We're going to have kind of those kind of events going on as well. And Sarah's always been one to collaborate with people. So, doing stuff together is great. People can message us via the website. as well, and just say, if there's stuff they're interested in or they think they can help
I know
with.
she loves the violin, right?
Yeah. So she plays violin. She's a great guitarist. She's an artist. She's written books and poetry and all sorts of stuff. And so there's people around that have got those same skills as well. So using that and collaborating, having exhibitions and poetry reading nights and or music nights, or all kinds of different stuff is kind of, haven't got a lot of confirmed dates, but there's things that are penciled in that we should be announcing soon. I was just going to say, in terms of the thing of people kind of being cautious about supporting the campaign, I think a point to make as well is, what she said, I think it's like a performative thing, at a demo in the heat of the moment. And she apologized for it. I don't know if people have seen, there's a very widely shared video that she asked us to take when she was arrested, where she was really clear, that she regrets what she said and she didn't mean any offense. So, it's like, you don't have to kind of feel like, yeah, that was a really good thing to say in order to support her. The point is people shouldn't be sent to jail for stuff like that.
It was at Trans Pride. It's undeniably significant that the transphobes have organized together to have a trans woman arrested and sent to a men's prison after giving a speech at Trans Pride. And again, like, you don't have to fully support the contents of what she said to be outraged about that and see it as a threat to all trans people, because it's meant to be. That's the point.
Yeah, plus people have said, so sorry, Anita.
No, carry on.
People have said much worse things about trans people, and they've not gone to jail for it. So, whose speech are we policing here? You know what I mean? Just for the benefit of the podcast listeners, Anita, could you tell us what the email is for sending messages to Sarah?
Yeah. So, the website address is www.freesarahjanebaker.com, and all of the other links are kind of listed there. Sorry, I can't quite remember the whole
No worries. No worries.
But yeah, all the links are there. So Facebook's Free Sarah Jane Baker, Twitter is Free Sarah J Baker. The Instagram, I think, is just Free Sarah Jane Baker as well. So I just wanted to say as well, like, in terms of how people treat something, I was having conversations with some older comrades that were involved in the miners' strike, and I think there was a speech particularly by Neil Kinnock, who was condemning miners for sometimes doing things that maybe were inadvisable or that they regret afterwards when they're on strike. And it's like, I think when people are fighting oppression, and they're part of a movement and they're trying to fight for something progressive, and they're constantly, like, Sarah's been beaten up by transphobes, constantly being goaded to focus on, they lost control a bit and were reckless at one point in time, and clamp down on them for that, rather than actually support them as people that overall are fighting against oppression and for human liberation. I think it's a real lack of solidarity.
Very disappointing.
Yeah.
Well, and also, to return to it being Trans Pride, there are people saying things on this level at Trans Pride, and not every one of them is getting litigated and prosecuted over it, because it is all understood, just like you're saying, as like a heat of the moment. They are part of a big movement that is responding to, as Mule said, like much worse stuff all the time, and like you constantly goaded, and then like people get together to feel safe and to feel empowered, and they end up saying stuff like this. And this is what I'm saying about Trans Pride, is that, like, I'm sure hundreds of people said the same, maybe even exact same words that day, and they're not being prosecuted over it. And at the very least, those hundreds of people should be people who are saying, no, fuck that, like, she shouldn't be prosecuted because I've said stuff like that. That's what they should be saying. And and they should be standing up for her. But really, everyone who went to Trans Pride, everyone who feels like they support trans people at all, everyone who thinks that prisoners should be treated like human beings, everyone who thinks that the Home Office shouldn't be allowed to act as just a fascist overreach machine that can completely go over the head of the entire legal system and just imprison people because their fashy fans on Twitter said so. It's a huge, it just can't be overemphasized what a broad issue this is and how many things tie into it and how little it's proportionally to that, how little it's being picked up on.
And for Sarah herself, it's really freaking tragic as well. She was in prison for such a long time and had such a rubbish time, and was out here and trying to kind of deal with issues and adjust to this outside world and do a lot of campaigning. And I think she's given a lot of people confidence in her trans campaigning as well, in particular. And to then send her back to jail, re-traumatize her, it's just the worst thing to do for someone. I say, if you wanted a society where you want people to be well adjusted and able to participate and reach their potential and everything else, sending somebody back to jail for this kind of reason is the worst thing you could do. It just isn't helpful for anybody. She's no risk to anybody. And yeah, it just doesn't make any sense if what you're trying to do is have a peaceful society where people have got any level of human rights.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I feel like I'm always just like the abolitionist guy that just says the really token things all the time, but I just want to maybe mention just to the audience that it's like, if you're still kind of kicking around some of these ideas, I like to talk to people about the idea of okay, there's this crime that, we say she has committed by, encouraging violence or anything like that, but then to consider the violence of imprisonment and prison and the institution of prison in itself. And it's kind of this mistake that that she made, that she's apologized for, and said the stuff. Well, what she's said that she was kind of lost her cool, said this thing, whatever like that. She didn't mean it. She's very sorry, and all this kind of stuff is so inconsequential compared to the violence that has been inflicted on her by the state by locking her up, and this is something that is we're just supposed to accept that that's a normal thing that that the government just can do to you, and especially in this case where it's literally the government. She's a political prisoner. This wasn't she's a dangerous criminal and we need to get her off the streets to protect people, whatever. It's no, she went, the parole officer said, okay, no, this is, all right, I think you're in the clear. And then, TERFs on Twitter punished the Home Office and, just bullied the Home Office into actually being no, actually, that's not okay. We're going to go arrest her. And that's just something that we're just supposed to accept, that we just have to live with that something. And especially as people that are involved in activism and people that are in radical political spaces and stuff, it's kind of that thing where it makes you think well, okay, maybe it's maybe it's Sarah today, maybe tomorrow it's I don't know if any of you saw it, but when the Christchurch shooter happened down here, there was everyone on Facebook and everyone in the rallies was fucking punch a Nazi in the face or whatever like that. And it's that's a it's a similar call to violence. It's a similar it's attack a fascist or whatever like that. Absolutely. But there was this understanding that it was okay, this really terrible thing has happened to our community, and this is an expression of frustration. This is this kind of thing. So the way that it's just for some people it's not okay to say things like that, and that you can actually be imprisoned for that, I think is something that that a lot of people should really think about that. And
I also think on top of that, Tim, that what everybody listening has to remember is that the this kind of government we have in the UK, this essentially they're testing out super fascist policies. They're testing out super you know what I mean, oppressive policies where it's like, okay, let's see if we can just get a trans woman arrested for saying a thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, like everyone's kind of fine with that. So where does that stop? Like you said, like it could be you know, Sarah Jane Baker this week. It could be people just saying punch Nazis next week. It could be people saying punch Nazis this week. It could be anyone who follows Red Planet next week and all the hosts. Do you know what I mean? It's like where does that stop? You know what I mean? When people talk about like a slippery slope, it's often like a fallacy, right? And it's like, oh, you know, this could lead to this. This could lead to this.
Yeah. So they only ever talk about it about like you know, like gay marriage or something like that. They never want to talk about it about like, oh, they, you know, like encroaching fascism.
Of course. Of course. So again, you know, as we've been saying, every single person who has any sort of like anti-fascist bone in their body should be like fucking disgraced by this, disgusted by this. Like you should be fucking incensed that such a thing can happen. So that's my input, really.
The classic thing that the classic example that a lot of people talk about when they're talking about like, you know, like the encroaching kind of fascism or stripping of rights and anything like that is like the boiling frogs thing, where it's like if you boil a pot of water and you throw a frog in, it, you know, it jumps right out. But if you put a frog in a pot of normal, you know, room temperature water and slowly turn the heat up, it'll just stay there and cook, which is, you know, a horrific thing to do to a frog. Sorry to vegan Red Planet fans for yeah, that one. But yeah, and it's like the same thing, you know, it's like one day you just look around and you're just like, oh yeah, all these little things that were happening to, you know, other people or whatever like that. Now it's, you know, like now it's us, you know. Yeah, also getting producers note that no, they actually have to put a lid on the pot. The frogs do jump out. But, that is a classic metaphor for things.
The other metaphor that I had talked about this before at some point in my work, the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin is a series of big gray slabs that are set up as pillars, and they're roughly the size of a coffin, you know, from above each, but they're these tall like monoliths, right? And you can walk through the monument, you can walk through the memorial, and it's like the ground is moving at the same time that the slabs are getting taller. And so like the ground generally like dips into the middle of the thing. So as well as like the slabs themselves going up, the ground goes down. I think this is like the subtlest and smartest part of this art piece, is that like you don't notice the ground under your feet getting lower, you know? You can notice like they're all going up, and from the outside, they're just tiny little things you could accidentally trip over. But from the inside, like you're completely boxed in. And it's not just that they got bigger, it's that like the ground underneath you changed. And, you know, I think that that is the nature of these two things we're seeing, right? Is like at the same time, like fascists are getting bolder in the UK. Like someone at the Honor Oak drag queen drag brunch Turning Point UK protest was doing Hitler salutes and got reprimanded for it. You know, that's like these pillars rising, but at the same time, like the state giving into the slightest pressure from just TERFs on Twitter, and then like, yeah, imprisoning someone at the drop of a hat. That's the ground changing underneath our feet at the same time. Like that's the basic like things we rely on in society shifting to appease them and make the entire situation worse.
It kind of reminds me as well of, so I won't remember the details of it, but you know, the sort of classic poem kind of relates to the Holocaust of, you know, they came from
Martin
the Jews,
Niemöller's, yeah.
And I didn't do anything because I wasn't a Jew, and you know, eventually there's no one left for me. And when you think of the Holocaust, you know, one of the very early groups that were targeted were trans people then as well. And you know, I feel like it's somehow still more socially acceptable to have a go at trans people than to have a go at lots of other groups. But it's all related, you know. And you look at the people that are behind transphobia, they don't want abortion, they don't want gay marriage, and these things, you know, all come together, and which is, you know, just another reason why that solidarity is so important. Is like, it's not, I mean, Sarah kind of often makes the point, it's not really about being trans, it's about human liberation and being able to have freedom and live as you want to live. And, you know, these same people are, I mean, Owen Jones, I think, did a good thing the other day on LBC about the stabbings and how this is some of the result of transphobia. Is the same people that are transphobic, they don't like any difference in gender expression. You know, they don't like gay people or lesbians either, and the gays and
No,
lesbians think
just
they
sorry. I
do.
mean, just on the out on the street in London, like a lot of the time that I receive abuse, like it is homophobic slurs because they, you know, it's just to a bigot, it's all a spectrum of like people who are being more feminine than I think they should be. You know, whether that's being a completely otherwise, you know, masculine man who also dates men, or being a trans woman. It's all an unacceptable level of you know, queerness. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's like
And,
that
you
is
know,
what...
I see it's all part of a culture war of the government kind of deflecting attention from the rubbish job at maintaining public services and doing anything decent with the economy. They want scapegoats. And as part of doing that, it's like groups of people that are othered and that are seen as not proper humans. You know, that's, I think, what the bigotry is at the end of the day, is people feeling like, you know, trans people aren't proper humans, migrants aren't proper humans. It's fine to stick them, you know, and you talk about jail and what you go to jail for. You can get away with knowingly putting migrants that are probably fleeing from horrendous circumstances onto a barge with legionnaires, but say something off the cuff at trans pride and you get put in jail. I just want to say as well on what you're saying about, you know, the nature of prison. Like I knew, you know, I'd heard from people about how bad prison was, and obviously from Sarah herself, you know, before this happened. But I think when you've got somebody that you love and suddenly they're taken away and like from the court, taken to a jail where nobody knows where she is, she's not got any phone numbers, not able to contact anybody. And so for anybody with, even if you haven't got mental health problems, that's going to be really traumatizing and dehumanizing and horrible. And it just makes me kind of feel on much more of a visceral level like the power that the state has just to pick somebody up out of society and take them away and nobody even know where they are. And that's normal. It's like that is what happens to people when they get sent to jail. And
that was one of the main things that John from Prisoner Solidarity Network said to us. It's like you feel the full force of the state.
And like Sarah says, so many of the people that are in jail with her have got such serious mental health issues. I mean, I'm a nurse and I feel like if my patients on the open ward were displaying some of these symptoms, they absolutely would be transferred to a psychiatric hospital, if at all possible, unless they had overwhelming physical needs. And, you know, and yet that doesn't happen in jail. It's like it's just accepted that everyone has really serious mental health issues and they get locked up for 23 hours a day with no therapy, no input to address anything. And it just feels like, it sounds like just an old style asylum, like by and large, you know, that because what, you know, she's saying and describing to me, you know, they're just criminalizing mental health issues and locking people in away for 23 hours a day. It's just a dreadful way to treat people, and certainly doesn't help anybody that is behaving in a dangerous way. Treating them like that is not in any way helpful to anybody.
Yeah. You know, I two things I want to say on that. Like, one, you know, it is just the state kidnapping people, and they may have a justification for it based on rules that they, you know, say that we've all agreed on. But it is ultimately people being just like taken by the state and kidnapped. And on that, like in London especially, I've noticed this as the police has been expanded. You know, let's not fuck around with this. In response to the Wayne Couzens situation, right? They put more police onto the street after Sarah Everard was killed, when people were actively asking for less police, when people were protesting the police, they responded by adding more police. And part of that expansion, like something I've really noticed in that time is the number of unmarked police cars has shot up. And I don't know if this is some justification that they've got the cars, but they haven't yet decaled them or whatever. Like, I don't know if they've got any kind of internal justification for this, but it is so many more functionally cop cars in disguise that you don't know are cop cars until suddenly the siren goes off and the lights start flashing from under the grill. And, you know, I've seen some of these that are just black vans, right? And I'm just like, if a black van pulls up, right, and a guy gets out and he's wearing a stab-proof vest and a little camera, and he says, I'm a police officer and you have to get in this black van right now, right? It's like, firstly, if you are a police officer, I know what Wayne Couzens did, so fuck off. Like,
right.
And but secondly, what like even slight air of legitimacy are we supposed to believe in? You know, it's just got to a point where we have just unmarked cars full of plainclothes cops, you know, who don't need to prove to you in any serious way that they are like the special class of person who gets to do that stuff to you. But even then, they shouldn't get to do that stuff to you. It's just the levels of like lunacy in it.
Yeah, that an unmarked car can just pull anyone in off the side of the street. It's like, when you really think about that, like how fucked up and how wild that is. And it's like, there's been conversations I've had with people where I've talked about things like that, and they're just like, that doesn't happen. Like, that's just something that happens, like, you know, in like a fucking Jason Bourne movie or something like that. And it's like, no, it does happen. It probably just doesn't happen to like, you know, like maybe like you, like the, you know, the like people that look like you or people that you hang out with or whatever like that. It might be not happening to you, but it's happening to people. And whether it's like, you know, it's you know,
it was
like
one of the scariest stories in the
like that. Like,
it was one of the scariest stories in the George Floyd uprisings. I remember this. There was a van pulled up and some dudes got out and they had, you know, military style gear and equipment, and they were like, get in the van, come with us to this person, and abducted this person off the street. And then like in processing what had just happened afterwards, everyone was like, fuck, there was no even claim that they were police. We just like went along with the idea that they were police. And that's utterly chilling, you know? Anyway, the second thing I wanted to say was that, Anita, thank you for mentioning migrants, because this is like, you know, an example of where solidarity in the British left is really strong, is lesbians and gays support the migrants, right? And this is the kind of solidarity that we need to build and recognize. We need people looking across at each other's struggles and like helping each other out. And you know, this is somewhere where I would love to see just a lot more solidarity for prisoners in general from the British left, because I think that there is this pernicious cycle with the British media that the Murdoch press has really sharpened to an exact science with like how they tell us, the public, that we are bigoted. And then because they're telling us this proportion of people think this thing and act this way and hold these beliefs, people start to just adopt them because they think they're more normal. And then it becomes true. They essentially, you know, they print these headlines and they turn it into reality. And, you know, I think because of that, there is this long-running cycle of British brain against migrants, against queer people, but you know, against prisoners is a huge one. Is this idea that like, you know, well, they did something wrong, so they don't deserve anything at all, is a huge feature of British brain. And because of that, the British left frequently just like either implicitly agrees with it, which I think is again morally bankrupt, or morally cowardly because they're saying, well, I can't get Keith in Swindon to think that prisoners are human beings, so I won't bother to act with solidarity for prisoners. And it's like, come on, like acting with solidarity towards prisoners like can mean that we all act that way and we can be enough to make a difference. We can actually do it, whether the Stevenage woman that Keir Starmer is trying to appeal to, who always votes Tory, agrees with it or not. Like, we are enough. And we got to support prisoners.
And it's like such a thing with, you know, like conservative parties where one of their like fallback things, especially when it comes into election year, which we're seeing a lot of down here at the moment is like the tough on crime kind of rhetoric sort of thing. So you get like these like mainstream kind of conservative parties where it's like they will do absolutely anything to criminals and prisoners in an election year, you know. It's just like they, yeah, it's like it's such I think it is like a very like wedge thing for a lot of kind of conservative and liberal kind of voters, where they you know, like they just assume that like if someone's in jail, it's because they're bad, you know, and it's because it's better for them to be there. And you know, and then like the more conservatives will be like, someone is in jail, it's because they don't deserve any rights or anything like that. Whereas like it's kind of like, you know, even like the liberal people that are like, you know, like we should put bad people in jail sort of thing. I think like, you know, we can push back on that with like a lot of liberals. But yeah, anyway, the like the conservative thing where it's like tough on crime, I mean, it's like, you know, like stricter sentencing and all these kind of things like that. It's just such a like it's a tool to them, you know. It's like they don't even think about the individual prisoners or the people or anything like that. It's just like the rhetoric. It's just like the tools that they're using and stuff. And then like, you know, they'll promise all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, before you know it, there's like people in the street. Like over here,
Yeah.
a lot of the things comes back to gangs and like gang crime or whatever like that. Where if you were to ask a person on the street, like the average newspaper or reader or whatever like that, they would think that like the streets are just filled with gang crime. Like everywhere you look, like you pick up a stone and there's like a mongrel mob guy like selling meth to a child or some shit like that, which is just not the case whatsoever. But it's like they need to create this idea of you know, like an omnipresent kind of threat or whatever like that to sell the tough on crime rhetoric. And you know, and then it's like you get these people that are, you know, you get the prisoners or whatever that are just like the victims of, you know, this whole kind of like this propaganda war that is essentially just for securing votes, you know. And I think there's the tough on crime stuff is something that like I think a lot of people don't think about it as being just pure, like it's a culture war kind of thing, but it does have like this very real, like there are these people that are involved in this, that, you know, all these like thousands and thousands of people, if not millions, that are just like locked up, that like, you know, like in most places in the world, like prisoners don't even get to vote or anything like that. And they're like these you know, like they're just kind of getting passed around in this like battle
Yeah.
on the outside or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like yeah, there's been a lot of campaigns down here about, you know, like getting prisoners the right to vote with, you know, like some success and stuff. But I think that's also something that a lot of people should think about, like you know, if you're at home and you're not sure, like maybe look into, is there, you know, can prisoners vote in my state or in my country or whatever? Because it's really interesting when you start thinking about like the denial of rights and things like that. And you know, anyway, sorry, you were going to say something, so
Oh, sure. I mean, no, what was I going to say? Oh, it was incredibly shitposty and irrelevant. I'll say it anyway. If I were to engage in political cartoons, the lowest form of human art, right? Like for Aotearoa, it would be like some like British expat who's reading like national propaganda that's just like there are mongrel mob guys every 5 feet along the pavement.
yeah,
Outside you can see that like it's just a beautiful sunny day and there's nothing there, and he's just going like, damn, it's nearly as bad as what I'm reading about Britain, you know. But you know, I just find I find cowardice over rhetoric like so spectacularly pathetic, because I think the left often has this like feeling like we need to keep close to where the right is, right? We have to remain within the same conversation. We can't just start speaking on utterly alien terms to them. And it's like, firstly, the right have already done this, right? They have their own reality. They have QAnon and they have the ULEZ conspiracy theories and all of this like nonsense, right? Like, and that's entirely just speaking to their own audience who won't be able to pause the mainstream conversation. And so like maybe we need to have leftist representatives in the mainstream conversation who keep within that conversation, right? But like we should absolutely just be talking straightforwardly and honestly to a leftist audience and to each other about this stuff, you know, in honest terms, because it's not honest to talk like prisoners deserve any less rights, right? They don't. It's not honest to talk like prison is a thing that should even exist. It shouldn't, right? Go, Anita, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, it sounds like, what you're talking about is people sort of abandoning their principles to chase votes. So, I think that's what some of it comes down to. And I think, I mean, I'm a socialist, that's my background, but if you want to change things, then you actually have to win people over to your ideas. And you certainly don't win people over to your ideas if you don't actually say what your ideas are. It's just the wrong way around. If you want to chase anything and you're just chasing whatever the media says people believe, well, you're not going to get very far. I mean, in terms of prisoners, I think, it is like all the tabloid stuff, but I think it's really, really embedded as well. Like, even if you think about dramas or you think about crime novels and all of this thing, like, I've learned a lot through knowing Sarah, in terms of, and question like your own assumptions about what do you think a bad person is? Like, what does that actually mean? And if somebody in certain circumstances, like, you see it all the time, like with war or something like that, where somebody behaves in certain circumstances in a way that they never would have thought that they could or would behave in. And it's like, Sarah's circumstances were extreme growing up. I've never been in that situation. I don't know what I'm capable of if I was put into certain situations. I just don't know. And if somebody does do something that is, really hurt somebody, it's that hurts. I don't like this sort of, sometimes I feel like people are kind of trying to minimize that hurt as well. And it's, the victims of crime, victims of violence can be traumatized for the rest of their lives. But that's not the only thing about the person that did that. It's like, if something dreadful has happened, if you've done something dreadful, it's like, how do you move on from that? That person's still alive, and that's not everything about that person, and that's their person at like that worst moment in their life. And it's really complicated, and just to sort of class people as that's a bad person and that's a good person, I just don't believe that that's the way that humans are. And if we're not addressing people's circumstances and mental health needs and physical needs and educational needs and all of the things that people know are kind of risk factors, then people just don't stand a chance. I've slightly lost the thread of my point, but
no, I think you're right. Mark Fisher said if the figure of discipline is the worker prisoner, the figure of control is the debtor addict. And what he's saying about the figure of discipline being the worker prisoner, right, is that there's this dichotomy between ordinary brackets good people and exceptional brackets bad people, right? And it's like, if you're not a worker, you're going to wind up being a prisoner. So this system that we've built is, if you're not working, right, it's not technically illegal not to work, but if you're not working, but you expect to have, say, a house, power on in that house, water running in that house, food to eat, connection to the internet, like the things that people need for their day-to-day, right, then without working and therefore receiving a wage, you're going to run into some kind of crime sooner or later, right? And so functionally, you are either a worker or you are a prisoner. And this extends out to, I don't know, the DWP, right? If people aren't familiar, the UK Department of Work and Pensions, people who are on benefits are functionally treated as a prisoner, right? They are a prisoner of bureaucratic systems. It is not the same as being a prisoner in prison by any stretch, but it's horrifying. And the conditions for a lot of people, I've been on benefits. My family has received various benefits from the DWP when I was growing up. I have a lot of familiarity with this, and like it is the other place where you see an enormous share of the power of the state is the way that it controls people's lives and demands that they act exactly so. All of that, in terms of public discourse, relies on the deeply ingrained idea that people who are not good workers who do as they're told are bad, like ontologically evil, deep down, of serious problem with them. And that firstly is, a horrifyingly like eugenicist idea, right? Because a lot of the people that the DWP are giving benefits to are poor, of course, poor people, disabled people, single parents, right? And people of color. So, like, of course, all of this is implicitly shading everyone that a eugenicist would label out as like people to get rid of from society as bad ones, right? Who should be treated differently. But again, like it treats these different classes of people like they have different ethical value, and therefore, when we're having ethical conversations, we just shouldn't really count them. We should count them as a 0, not a 1 in that conversation. They don't get anything that you would weight and consider and multiply in that calculation of what they deserve. None of it matters because they're the bad kind of person, right? So they just don't interact with the world in that way. They simply go through it in an utterly different way. And it's just, well, it's despicable. But yeah, as you said, it is deeply ingrained. And we have to just start resisting that because, like, for one, I mean, how many people like already know someone who is in this other category? I think one thing that's really important in pointing out is, like I just said, like people who receive benefits are treated in like functionally treated in this category, although their treatment is not the same. But they're not a worker who's doing what they're told, who's being a productive member of society, according to this ideology. And so we should understand the solidarity between everyone in this other category. And then we'll realize there are actually far more of us than there are of the people imposing this system. And furthermore, like the threat against supposedly normal workers is itself, this is something we can explain to people. This threat itself is unacceptable. But yeah, I think that prisoner solidarity is just a deeply like essential socialist principle.
I think Ashran is, in the Twitch chat has just reminded me of something. The Tories are desperate to rip up the human rights laws that we're sort of like, we're still sort of kind of adhering to with the EU. And this is just kind of going to be one example of that. This is again, I was talking before about like, they're trying to see how far they can push it. This will be like the litmus test for like how much consent have we manufactured to be able to do this to just anyone, right? So again, if you're like, we're all about the hopium here on Red Planet chat, or listeners at home as well, but this is getting bad, and it's going to keep getting bad, and voting is not going to fix it, because Keir Starmer is not even remotely an option against the Tories. Like, just what a it's a complete joke. Like, everybody should really be thinking about how there is no hope in the elections right now for anything progressive to get in, and how we need to now just start organizing. We just need to start organizing. Everybody needs to start organizing in the UK. It's possibly one of the most important things, I think, that everybody should be talking about. Even if you just go into your fucking, if you're a Labour member still for whatever stupid reason, you need to go to your local Labour meeting and going, listen, let's be frank, he's not doing anything we want to do. We need to start talking to the trade unions again. If you're not already talking to him, if you're not already talking to your tenants union, if you're not already,
furthermore, for the record of the meeting, he has a square head. His head is square. What's up with that?
Yeah, very important. These are important questions, everyone. So you need to be asking that stuff. Yeah, I think that we have to really sort of like drive home just how much this is the start. Like, it's going to be easier to have conversations with like Americans about this, because the UK seems to be adopting a US style of policing, and it's been like that anyway, but sort of very toned down. Oh well, the police in the UK don't have guns, so it's not that bad. They've only beaten black people to death, like they haven't shot them. It's like these things happen, but I guess like, nobody wants to talk about them in the UK, but like it's getting more and more brutal. It's getting more and more of an overreach, and this is something the
Met Police absolutely have shot black people to death.
That's true as well. There are definite like police departments in the UK that have done that. They have literally fucking done the thing. But again, it's this culture we have in the UK. It's like we don't want to talk about that. We don't even want to talk about how the police are awful. Like, you know, this is not just, I think, a prison abolition conversation. This is an overall encompassing, like, anti-fascist, anti-cop, you know, very progressive discussion that everybody needs to be having in every circle.
I think there's a tendency sometimes people have, they're part of an older dogmatic strain of Marxist socialist, and they think this is what the platform of the left is. So if protest is happening around this and in this way, then that's not then organizing the right way, right? And the biggest classic example of this would be workerism, socialists trying to say we must get the industrial proletariat together and it's like, well, where's the industrial proletariat in the UK? We don't have it anymore. They exported it. But you know, rather, you know, a dialectical materialist rather than a historical one would look at the conditions that are now, and one of the big clues to what conditions are now that people are upset about is what people are protesting about. And the police is just a huge issue of our time. Prisons are a huge issue of our time, and we're like leftists being part of any kind of political mainstream discourse are going to be utterly left behind if we don't embrace prisoners' rights and prison abolition and police abolition as like fundamental pieces of our platform, because like that is the stuff that people are actually steamed about, and it is a workable, you know, keystone of building the larger project, because anything is a workable keystone of building the larger project if it's the thing people are mobilized around now. You know, it's the thing that's got the energy, it's got the thing that's got the momentum.
Yeah. Can I come back on a bit of
Anita.
your... That's all right. I was just going to come back on a bit of your politics, since we're having this like proper political conversation now. So yeah, like I said, I mean, my background, I'm a socialist, and I want to say something you were saying earlier, Sophie, which I'm sure is implied, is there is a group of people, obviously, who are not working and who are not in danger of going to prison, who, you know, I might consider criminals, and lots of people might consider criminals, as the disgustingly wealthy people that
and certainly bad people
suck all of the resources out of us. And even for people that are working, you know, I always call it wage slavery, that you have this level of freedom, and it's I feel that people think they've got a lot more freedom than they have. You know, as I said with Sarah's arrest, you walk around and I'm feeling a lot more vulnerable now than I was. You have this delusion that you've maybe got more rights and more say over your life than you have, but at the end of the day, you only earn enough to keep yourself alive, and you don't save any money, and you don't end up one of the wealthy ones, even if you think that you will. I'm afraid I'm one of those sad people that does go to some of the meetings and things that maybe some of you don't. You know, I think in theory, my trade union should be able to organise and elect good leaders and put pressure on the Labour Party and get the Labour Party to represent them. Not that I'm not, you know, the Labour Party has never really represented working people, but the channels are there, you know, so I'm always in favour of people using the channels that are there and trying to push for something. But sadly, you know, it's despite the huge number of strikes that there's been, I'm not sure that trade unions are really getting their voices heard in the way that they should. And even within trade unions, I'm not sure that members are getting heard enough by their leadership as they should. And it's hard to hold people to account. And it's a huge cultural thing, you know, of people not really asserting themselves in trade unions. But I think that it's, you know, use every tool in the box. It's like, you know, to go do part, you know, I'm writing a motion that I'm going to circulate about Sarah for people to put to meetings, because I do think that there's a point and there's a power in doing that. But the culture war is having a huge impact on lots and lots of people, and it's a threat to the, you know, it's an ideological threat. And being part of that and being part of demonstrations and of people who are trying to organise and fight against oppression is absolutely the job, I believe, of every Marxist, every socialist. That's absolutely part and parcel of the job. And you know, as you say, you try and change things where you can. And you know, ultimately, I think the organised working class is the agency to change things. But you know, that doesn't mean that you only address yourself to trade unions. You know, you meet people where they are. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't want to be misunderstood as being like wholly anti-workerism. I think that exactly like you said, we should use every tool in the box. And I think like you could apply what I just said about like what people are mobilized around right now, and equally say, as you just said, there have been a ton of strikes. People are mad about their working conditions, and the organized working class is a huge thing that like we're seeing resurgent in the UK right now. But just to like not let anyone like limit it to one thing, because it's all solidarity. Like the entire thing is solidarity, and like you know, another common kind of critique point is that people think that all of, say, identity politics is part of the neoliberal end of history simulation of politics, is just this like complete like non-materialist entertainment, like politics as entertainment bubble. And it's like, well, firstly, no, because it does affect people's real material conditions, which, you know, each minority who is in turn scapegoated has like their actual material conditions worsened. Sarah wasn't in prison and now she is. That's worsened material conditions, right? But also, no, if it's the thing that people are steamed about, if it's the thing that people are mobilizing around, then it's the thing that the left should be pouring into and using, because ultimately, like, it's all a game of momentum, and the state just wants to keep on immobilizing us, so we should be trying to keep the ball rolling everywhere that the ball is rolling, right?
And I definitely think like organizing your trade union to lobby the Labour Party is definitely one of the lesser bad reasons to still be a member.
Well, yeah, no, 100%. If Labour would ever listen to them, absolutely.
Just to clarify,
it just will require the Labour leadership being utterly replaced for that to happen. I think because Starmer and Streeting are these neoliberal tulpas, and it's just not like they're not gonna listen.
Yeah.
It may not be as true as it was, but I think that sometimes there's a point in talking to the members as well, that it's getting a hearing for what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, there's ample opportunity to radicalize them.
I also think that, like, to some degree, there should be some circumventing of the Labour Party in this regard of solidarity, because what you're saying there about like a motion to try and get your trade union to support Sarah, like, I think that's great. And I think that's an example of somewhere where, like, I think that in recent discussion, I've kind of simplified down things that people are currently fighting on to about 6 points, right? We've got the networks of mutual aid to take care of one another. We've got prison abolition, borders, anti-fascism, anti-capitalism, and climate change. Right, are the kind of essentially the 6 fronts that we're on, and solidarity between those can entirely circumvent bourgeois electoralism. Like if trade unions, for example, decided that like they wanted to share an anti-fascist solidarity. Now, this would be an utterly radical step for modern trade unions because a lot of them play in respectability politics. A lot of them are like heavily corporatized. You could argue this makes them yellow unions. I have before, but if they decided that they were going to like show serious anti-fascist solidarity, and that there was going to be, a Unite Union Black Bloc or whatever, like, that is the kind of solidarity I'm talking about, where like there are huge numbers in some areas, in some of these fronts, right, of people who could be mobilizing in different directions, and those huge numbers would make an enormous difference on other fronts, and kind of currently aren't, so like and so again, to revisit, like I consider all of the British queerphobia to be an example of the anti-fascist struggle. right? Because it's a fascist concern to try to take away our bodily autonomy, to stop people being trans, to stop people accessing abortion, to stop people having not being heterosexual. This is all stochastic and state terror, stochastic and state fascism, right? And so lesbians and gays support the migrants, right? Is solidarity across these fronts of anti-fascism and border abolition, right? And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, like that whether we bother to, slip in a memo and be like, hey, Keith, we're doing this, by the way, you should probably support the left, but you're not gonna, but you probably should. I think that there's a solidarity that we should build, around any kind of left party. And when I say around, I mean circumventing, and they can engage with it if they want to. But I think that we, as the left in Britain, in the imperial core broadly, like need to start taking steps towards like a power that can actually defend people and improve their material conditions, because like electoral politics is just letting us down.
I guess I think, trade unions, if they were strong and confident and properly representative, and probably, maybe to start with, really taking on industrial struggle in a proper way. And I don't mean I mean workplace struggle, not just factories or whatever, but whatever area they're in. That trade unions shouldn't be just limiting themselves to economic struggles, that at the height, historically at the height of good trade union organization, then they start to take on these political issues as well. And I know that there's, although, I don't want to sort of downplay the dreadful state of many of our trade unions, but there are also some really dedicated activists in there, and actually, who do come to demos, who are in favor of, having trade unions, making donations to help some of the grassroots and community-based campaigns happen, and trying to bring those politics into the trade unions. So yeah, I mean, as I say, I think that there's the organised working class is the agency to change things. I don't think that we should be, too stuck in terms of, oh well, which trade union or whatever, or it may be that there's something that happens and the existing trade unions all fall apart, and we have another mass trade union that can really help get people together to change things. Equally, the Labour Party might be smashed, and I mean, I think if Corbyn had come to power, it would have split there and then anyway. It's not about sticking with particular organisations for the point of it, but having ways for people to, as you say, to organise. I think that there's something about organising as workers, that if it actually happens properly, it can take the levers of the control of society away from these parasites that are currently calling the shots. This is totally off topic from Sarah, but that's just what I think.
No. We're very big on this.
Building dual power unions, establishing councils of workers. What's the Russian word for that again? Can't remember. Getting a bit carried away. But, it's good. We're on board.
Yeah, 100%. I think maybe this is some a worthwhile point in this is that, like you just said, when trade unions historically have been at their most powerful, they've been more democratic than they currently are. And I think that democratizing and taking steps to democratize workers' movements is the big thing that would shift where they currently are, where you have the largest unions having like a properly corporate CEO who earns like a PMC wage, and is like, therefore, like we have to question their kind of implicitly their loyalty to the working class, honestly, right? And they're part of like an executive board that like gets to dictate policy for the whole union and stuff. Changing that to be seriously democratic, I think would have the results I'm talking about. So it's like when I'm advocating that there should be this solidarity, I'm not saying, so, go away and figure that out yourselves. I'm saying like, the path to this is the same thing that would make unions stronger, which is getting members to push on the things that they care about. I think there's like, exactly like you said, so many dedicated activists in so many of these unions, and it's like yeah, there are so many people across all these fronts, and you'd think it would be an easy win for like the reactionary media to point at like Just Up Oil protesters and who are trans or whatever, and say, look, it's the transgenders, they're the ones who care about this thing, and so all the loony left are all one thing together. But they actually don't focus on this too much, and I personally think it's because they're really scared of pointing out the solidarity that there are across these fights. They're actually quite scared to show like, well, it's actually a lot of trans people who show up for this climate change stuff. It's a lot of queer people are showing up at these migrant border abolition demos or whatever. There are people who are from migrant families showing up to support trans rights, and all this kind of stuff. They actually don't want to point that out too much, because they would be showing people caring about people who are slightly different from themselves but share in the same struggle, and that would actually have the reverse effect on all of their readers.
They want to divide us, not unite us.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that, I guess, regarding workerism, my main thing is just like it will all be working better if we push for making the unions more democratic.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that sometimes there's a thing in the left as well of people that which is probably partly where you're coming from, ignoring dealing with the oppressions that are here today in society today, and kind of go, oh no, the main thing is the unions or whatever, and which is totally just blinkered, I suppose, but that socialism would be a carnival of the oppressed, and it's absolutely essential. And when you talk about the effect on trans people of the culture war and what's happening, it's like, yeah, Sarah's in jail. Also, lots of trans people can't even get any freaking employment, and the rights in jail have been wound back, and they want to attack the Equality Act, and it's like, in the outside world, Sarah didn't know what toilet to use, and it's just like she just wants somewhere safe, and it's just crazy, and it is, I mean, it seems to me anyway, I'm not trans, so I'm always looking at it from the outside, but it feels like there's just such a high level of persecution, and it has such a bad effect on people, and yet at the same time, despite all the media, I think when you actually look at the figures, I saw something Nadia Whittane put around about different groups of people's opinions about trans people, that most of the public either support trans people or just don't know about it and don't concern themselves with it. It's like, as you're saying, in the media, sort of blowing something up to try to convince you that most of the public think something, when they don't. Like the miraculous thing is actually that despite all of that, most of the public don't think that at all.
Yeah.
I was gonna say about like, because that's the whole thing, right? Like someone, I think it was Novara Media, had an Instagram post about this today, where it was like they were quote tweeting. It was a screenshot from Twitter where they were quote tweeting, the news that now new buildings are going to have less gender neutral toilets. And someone's quote tweeting this saying like, yeah, like I can't afford food and I think my nan's gonna die this winter, like I don't give a fuck about any of this, like it's so obvious. It's like where all the worst bits of our society are, and it's in government. Like everybody is seeing it so obviously for what it is. It is such a horrific minority, and you do see this when you go to anti-fascist counter demonstrations, right? You literally like we'll see how few fascists will turn up, and overwhelmingly anti-fascists are there, and even like trade unions will be there, and like I remember like talking about this one that was at University of Manchester, and I was talking to someone in the tenants union about it, and he said, hang on a minute, we should notify the trade unions and stuff. And I told the organizers, and they felt that we had enough people. But I think that even then, like, you know, getting trade unions down, like getting like a bunch more people down to just be like, you know, fuck you, Fash, like you're not welcome here. That could have been really, really good as well, just even more. But you know, like I think the funny thing is that we didn't need extra help in that one particular instance. But you know, it's just such a absolutely bizarre, brain poisoned you know, talking point topic for you know, anyone in this country, like literally, like you say, like, you know, no, like most people, like the existence of trans people does not like even bother them. Like it's just completely absurd that anyone would care about like gender neutral toilets. And this is a thing because gender neutral toilets are such a good argument against the fucking so-called bathroom debate, right? Because gender neutral toilets in Manchester, at least, they've existed for over 10 years. Like fucking, you know, I used to go to a place called Mint Lounge when that was still open, and their only toilet was a gender neutral toilet. And this is a club, you know, where you know, fucking hell, like if you want to talk about like the safety of women, you know, like and this is like a huge thing, like it makes absolutely no sense, like, but apparently now there's new guidance about it, and you know, it's just such a horrible nasty thing to do. Again, the state organizing well, flexing their muscles, right? It's flexing their muscles.
We're getting a few questions into chat, and I am appreciating the conversation that we're having and the discussion that we're having, but I also want chat to consider like asking some any questions, especially that they have to do with Sarah's situation that Anita can answer. And on that, I want to maybe wind in towards that again for a minute before we answer some questions, and then we're going to have to wrap up the interview so that we can do our news section. Very strangely structured episode today, so we're just having to talk it through on the fly. But Anita, could you tell us again what people can do for Sarah at the moment, and also remind us the situation that she's in?
Yeah. So the situation at the moment, Sarah is being held in Wandsworth Prison, men's prison, as a trans woman, being given very few, even like, because they've changed the rules about this. But even within that, because most of the time when she was in jail for 30 years, she was always in men's prisons, but she had certain rights, like since I think about 2011, that they would have to provide her with female clothes. She was able to shower separately. You know, they had things in place. And with the change in the rules saying that, oh, most trans women can't go to a female prison, they seem to have just thrown all of the other provisions that they had in the bin as well. I mean, what you're saying about bathrooms, I think people just want somewhere that's private and safe to be able to, you know, go to the toilet and wash. I mean, I don't think most people, certainly in this country, most people don't really want to sort of shower in front of other people. But yeah, they won't let her shower separately, so she's not been able to shower. So, you know, so that's where she is. So there's a dual, because it's a bit confusing, her situation. So I'll just explain. There's two different things going on. One thing is that she was charged, and she's now facing a second quite similar charge to do with the speech that she made at Trans Pride. So she's got court days with regards to that. The next day in court's the 22nd, and then the trial's the 31st. Demos before both of them. The 22nd one from 10 a.m. Westminster Magistrates Court. The 31st City of London Magistrates Court, again from 10 a.m. So that's one thing, is that she's facing that charge. She's pleading not guilty. The second thing is because she was on a life license and under probation, she's been recalled to prison. So even if she's found not guilty of the things that actually she was arrested for, she'll still remain in prison because she's been recalled. So she will also be challenging that and applying for parole, but that's not likely to happen that soon. It's probably going to be some months before that happens. And as I said, the third thing is that she wants to be transferred to a female prison. So there's different things going on. In terms of supporting her, you can come to the demos. If you go to her website, that's www.freesarahjanebaker.com. Then we've got an email address there. You can send messages of support to her there. We've also got links to our social media, most of which is a variation of freesarahjanebaker.com. You know, you can share social media. We're going to have other events in the future if you want to come along to or get involved in organising events. I'm drafting, and I'll hopefully have out soon, a model letter, an open letter for people to sign, and motions that people can pass if it's relevant to you in trade unions or similar organisations. And if there's, you know, if you're an artist or photographer or have any particular skills or with social media or designing flyers or whatever it is, there's loads of things that you can do to help with the campaign. So you can message us via the website and be very happy to have you along. You might even want to set up a campaign in your own area, as they've now done in Brighton. They'll also be having, or certainly part of their events in Bristol. I've got someone that's going back to Italy to talk to organisations over there. So yeah, it's a really broad range of things that you can do to offer support. So thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. So we have a couple of questions from the audience before we wrap up the interview. Ashrand asked, does Miss Baker know how much support she has from the outside?
I hope so. I'm always passing things on to her and letting her know, you know, we're having demonstrations. These are the things that are happening. So the only good thing I can say about Wandsworth is that most of the time she is able to ring me quite frequently. So I am passing that on. She's also getting letters and photos of demos and things being delivered to her. But, you know, if you want to make sure that she knows that she's got your support, then do please write to her.
Okay,
Great.
tremendous, yeah.
Great.
And Anarchic Alex asked a bit of a longer question, but it's one we've kind of already been batting around. Why do you think we're not seeing more about this among other leftists, e.g. climate activists, tenant unions, cop watchers, trade unions? Are these groups still afraid to stand up for us trans people, even though we share the same enemy and are ultimately fighting for the same things?
So, I mean, I feel that the support that I've had so far has mostly been from either trans campaigns or, you know, some, as you said, a lot of trans people that are involved in trans rights campaigning are also involved in environmental politics and similar things. So that's, I guess, been the natural kind of group of people that have shown most support. It is disappointing because I feel like most people do know what's going on and could be approaching us and offering help. I think there's probably a bit more we can do to kind of try and outreach to people a bit more, which is something that we'll be working on. It's been incredibly busy to set things up as far as we have. But yeah, I think a lot of people who are not familiar with, you know, prisoner solidarity or really thinking about the issue, which I think is a lot of the left as well, you know, sadly, you know, there's even people on the left that call for tougher sentences and things like that against certain groups. So, you know, perhaps they feel put off. I don't know. I mean, I've been heartened at seeing the increase in size of things like Trans Pride, because a few years ago it was tiny. You know, that there seems to be an increase in support. But yeah, I mean, you're right. You know, it needs to be more. I think it's partly being a prisoner, and really sadly, I think that there's not enough people on the left that are really doing what they should be in solidarity with trans people, full stop, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, thanks for those answers. Those are all the questions that the audience have given. So, yeah, thank you so much. Again, everyone, that's www.freesarahjanebaker.com. You can find all the details there, including the email address to email Sarah your support. Yeah.
even
Thank
if
you.
it's just one sentence, just saying I
Anything.
support
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to a demo, take some photos, send them
Yep.
through.
Yep.
Anything like that, I'm
Yep.
sure would be absolutely awesome to see.
We have a crowdfunder too. I keep forgetting that.
Oh,
The
yeah.
other-
There
There
you
you
go. There you
Yeah, you can
go.
also donate. Wonderful.
Mm.
Well, I'm glad you said that because besides that, I was going to say thank you for joining us, Anita.
Yeah.
So it was a
Well, thank you
good
so much
last
for
minute
having me
addition.
on. Thank you
you for
very
coming.
much.
All
Take
right.
Our
care.
pleasure.
Solidarity.
Solidarity. Take care.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Okay, and that was Anita from Free Sarah Jane Baker. We are going to cover 3 little bits of news and then wrap up the show. As we say, very strangely structured show today, kind of fell together. We had a different guest, but we were going to just chat to Anita for a little bit. And then we obviously got more time to chat to Anita because the guest didn't show up. Well, obviously it was great chat with Anita anyway. And yeah, just like great to have her. So
absolutely.
now, oh, my leg's gone dead. So now we have a few news items that we would usually have done at the start of the show. We'll tell you now. First one, we talked last week about Niger. So Niger could be headed towards being used in proxy war between the West and Russia. Is how things currently kind of look. So if we remember what we were talking about last week, there's a coup in Niger against the current, I think, president. I can never remember which countries have presidents and which ones have prime ministers. Anyway, the coup was led by General Chiani and was explicitly against French colonialism. 35% of all uranium used in French nuclear stations comes from Niger, and 25% of all uranium used across the EU comes from Niger. So the extractive imperialist capitalist regime has, very, very strong, strong presence in Niger. And this coup is very interesting to see, a coup within Africa that is explicitly against colonialism and extractive imperialist capitalism. However, Putin's PMC, that's private military contractor force, the Wagner Group, have claimed responsibility for the coup. And it seems that people from Chiani's outfit also confirm this, that the Wagner Group was involved. There's a lot of kind of bullshitting around it, as there always is with anything tied to Putin, because smoke and mirrors is his whole entire thing. So Prigozhin said that this demonstrates the effectiveness of the Wagner Group. It was 1,000 Wagner fighters have now secured the region, which just kind of sounds like a nonsense statement on the face of it. So we don't, we can't know for sure what happened there. Only that they're claiming
Very
responsibility.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. I mean, I think the full context with the Wagner Group that people should bear in mind is how much kayfabe it is, right? I think I was telling Mule this last week, is like, my analogy for it is like, Vince McMahon, he's got the whichever like wrestling hero working for him, and then someone takes a heel turn and goes against him and starts calling out the WWE and saying, you're all a bunch of corrupt, greedy businessmen, and you only care about money, and you're exploiting the fans and you're exploiting the wrestlers. And then McMahon comes down and fights the guy and shows how tough he is. And this is this is the Wagner Group's coup. Like, it's patently absurd on the face of it that, like, just prima facie, the idea that like he just paid them off, and that's just like they were going to do a coup kind of for no reason, and then he just paid them off. It reads pretty clearly to me. This is just my own speculation, but reads pretty clearly to me like they were staging something, and they were just trying to highlight the Wagner Group as this potentially powerful force, again, like a turned wrestling heel who's able to challenge the management and then gets beaten down and carries on working for them. But it's a reminder that they have such a tough guy working for them. And now the Wagner Group are in Africa, claiming responsibility for a coup in Niger. So, this is all, in my opinion, has like elements of extremely orchestrated spectacle and optics going on. But ECOWAS, that's the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS countries are now committing troops for a possible military intervention in Niger. Now, ECOWAS, is part of the kind of modern neoliberal globe like capitalist order, is a similar like economic trade bloc group organized in the same way that the EU is, or the NAFTA agreement was or is, whatever. And so in this sense, like ECOWAS could be seen as taking the West side against this, and we may well see their military intervention being backed up by France and possibly the US as time goes on. Well, we will see. It's disappointing to see that a coup explicitly against French colonialism has apparently been backed by what will probably just be a different colonial master.
Right. Yeah.
And even more worrying for the people of Niger if it does turn into a proxy war. Something to keep an eye on as weeks go by, I reckon. There we go. Tim, do you want to tell us about Israel and Palestine action?
Well, yes. So, some freedom of information requests have confirmed that Israeli officials tried to influence the UK justice system regarding our comrades of the show, Palestine Action. So, we've talked about Palestine Action a bunch. We've had them on the show. They have done a lot of good work in the past, shutting down the war crimes factories of a group called Elbit Systems. So Elbit Systems, they're a UK-based company that they're the guys that make the drones that Israel uses to, kill children and all that kind of stuff. And Palestine Action have been really successful at shutting down their factories, basically just by shining a light on them and showing people that this is what they do here. And companies like Elbit, they don't like that. Like they often pick nondescript locations kind of in the middle of nowhere, and they prefer to just be doing their thing and nobody knowing what they're building, what they're making in these factories and where they're going and who they're making them for or whatever. So so in the past, Palestine Action have done actions like literally just like camping out outside the factory and highlighting what is done there and to what ends.
Oh, are you aware of the Palestine Action Underground development that happened? Because we reported on this last week.
Oh, no, I'm not, because I've been aware.
Well, I'll fill you in and anyone else who missed it. But basically, there is an offshoot now from Palestine Action. So Palestine Action, to clarify, are the comrades of the show. However, we cannot endorse this offshoot because they have committed to crime. And breaking the law is, of course, wrong, as the law is the arbiter of all morality. So Red Planet does not endorse this. But this Palestine Action Underground has popped up and basically is taking a stance that with the police cracking down on Palestine Action, they're no longer going to be doing like the kind of civil disobedience methods within the law that Palestine Action have been sticking to. In particular, there was a communique given to Freedom Press by a group called the George Habash Brigade. They claim that there are cells of Palestine Action Underground all across the UK, and they flew a small drone with a biohazard bag onto the roof of a drone factory. I don't remember if it was in Leicester or somewhere else, but as what they described as a present. So
it's like just that there's a fact that there's a drone factory in somewhere like Leicester, like, isn't that fucking weird?
Horrible,
like
disgusting.
This
is, we watched Nay Pazaran a while ago, right? And it's the as soon as people find out they're working on something that's like being used in this horrifying way, they're just like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. So so Israeli embassy officials in London got in touch with the Attorney General's office and tried to get them to interfere with the prosecution of protesters. So documents seen by the Guardian, the Guardian ones that investigated this, and so they obtained these papers through a Freedom of Information Act, and this is Palestine Action, and they indicate that embassy officials pressed for the Director General of the Attorney General's office, Douglas Wilson, to step in on these cases. So despite them taking place in the UK and being prosecuted by the UK justice system, Israel were like, well, representatives of Israel were like, no, look, we need to, like, this needs to be more serious. We need to kind of like, like, they're trying to, I guess, make it like a, like an international incident, which is like what, like, is the, like, Israeli embassies around the world often do this. Like,
Yeah.
when there was some New Zealand Israeli Jewish activists wrote to Lord, and they were like, hey, you should not perform in Tel Aviv, like, that's really shitty, like a bunch of shitty stuff goes on there. We love you, and we are, like, Israeli Jews, and we don't like, we don't think that people should be supporting what our kind of country does over there, and that, like, performing in these places kind of like, act like, it kind of like, it makes it seem like they're cool, and Israel loves to be like the cool place in the Middle East where all the pop stars go and all that kind of shit. So they wrote this letter being like, you shouldn't do that. And and so now they're like, basically, if they ever go to Israel, or if they ever go to a country that is like, has an extradition agreement with Israel or anything like that, they basically have to go to Israel and like face, I think they've been charged with treason by Israel, which is like absolutely wild, like,
how can you be treasonous to a place that you're like not in? Or is this about the people in Israel? Like, I'm confused.
Well, no, so they're in New Zealand,
right.
I was gonna say,
so it's like, so they can't, they can never go, see their family that still live over there, because there are people that grew up in Israel and then left and were like, holy shit, like they realize from the outside, they're like, man, like, I grew up bombarded by so much propaganda and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And even people that come to while they're growing up over there, like I've met people, like plenty of people like that. So like, once you see it from the outside, I think some people see it differently. There are a lot of people that, that the delusion is too strong, I guess. The propaganda is too strong. So
in chat, Anarchic Alex is saying it only demonstrates how successful Palestine action has been. Israel is getting seriously impacted by their actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, they hate the international attention on, what they do, on the illegal occupation of Palestine. So so the embassy got in touch. They were basically trying to be like, hey, look, like, you're not taking enough action, sort of thing. So the papers provided in response to this Freedom of Information Act request were heavily redacted, with the AG's office explained by saying that showing everything that was said in them would be likely to prejudice the UK's relations with Israel, which is like, okay, like,
what? If we admitted to what we say in private, then people, the public, might have some opinions about that, and we might have to act differently.
And it's like, they would, I mean, this things that they said in there would have been would have prejudiced the UK's relationship with Israel. It would have been like, hey, look, you need to fucking do something about this, or we're gonna do something, like, there's gonna be something like, we're gonna stop doing this or that, or there'll be something, like, that would have been where the real prejudice against the UK's relationships would have been, relations with Israel. But spokesperson for the Israeli embassy has said that as part of its ongoing work, the Embassy of Israel raises awareness on severe attacks against entities related to Israel. The entity they are referring to is a weapons factory that builds drones for blowing up children. And that's it, right? They're like, so Israel are constantly launching attacks against, civilians, against residential homes, against children, and they're acting as if, like, an attack on their weapons that they use to commit these, these literally genocidal acts is a crime, is like violence against them, it's like, it's deranged.
That connected to us.
Yeah. It's wild. It's like, those are their emotional support war crimes. But like, it's absolutely deranged that anyone takes this shit seriously. you know, like, and it's wild to see people outside of Israel, people that aren't Israeli or anything like that, you know, like people just taking these Zionist lines and just like accepting them and being like, oh yeah, you know, like they, you know, like the line is that, okay, well, you know, like the Jews deserve a homeland and stuff like that. And it's like, yes, all Jewish people deserve a safe place to live and stuff, but you know, like the Palestinian people deserve that too. And it's like, you know, like, yeah, it's fucking wild. And it's like, you know, even like when, you know, there have been times in the past where Palestinian people have like welcomed in, you know, the Jewish people, like the Israeli people, and they lived in harmony. And like, I mean, even though there was like, you know, obviously the initial agreement was like not of their choice, like it was largely bartered by like the UK and stuff, you know, to settle the Israeli people in Palestine. But like for a long time, it was like, you know, like I have friends who their parents' passports say like, you know, Israel Palestine, you know, like it was like it was a joint land. But then yeah, obviously it's gone far beyond that to a ridiculous point. And I didn't see how anyone that is not just fully drinking the Kool-Aid can just you know, can just stand by and just
I did tell you about the time I saw the guy with the Palestine Patagonia t-shirt, right?
no, what was that?
Oh, this is the worst centrist I ever met, right? So I was on a train, and you know the Patagonia logo that's like the hills?
Yeah,
It says
yeah.
Patagonia, right? So he's wearing this guy walks past me and he's wearing a t-shirt that's like that,
That is
only the
Palestine.
skyline, right? Yeah, and it says
Yeah.
Palestine, right? And I'm like, hey, cool shirt. And he turns around, he's like, what? And I'm like, that's a cool shirt, right? And he goes, and like this is like it's absolutely the voice I've done for this kind of guy for my whole life, but I swear to God, it is also just literally the actual voice he really had. He goes like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's actually my friends. Like I actually don't know loads about like the whole situation. I don't really have a position or whatever, but like cool, like I'm glad you like it. Yeah. Okay." And then he walked off. And it's just like,
That is the
you don't have a
worst
position
thing.
on genocide. Like, fuck.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's like the guy that, I mean, it's like, okay, well, fucking thanks for the solidarity, bro. Like, you know, like,
Yeah, like I made
thanks
up
for
a guy to
shouting out
get
the
mad
cause.
at, and then he existed. Like I could, you know, you could come up with this guy, and then he's fucking real, and he's in front of me on the train.
Yeah. Um, yeah, no, absolutely wild. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, so that's just a little peek at the way that you know, like the that Israel kind of tries to get involved to like punish any kind of critics or any kind of disruption of their activities outside of Israel. Yeah, a lot of the times they will try to call for people to be, you know, to stand trial in Israel as well. So yeah, just absolutely like, yeah, deranged stuff. But Mule, why don't you tell us about how things are heating up in the northern hemisphere there? What's
Oh
going on?
yeah, yeah, that's right, Tim. I take no joy in telling you this, everybody listening and watching. It's wildfire season. Even though the world is definitely not ending, things are about to get a hell of a lot worse because this is easily like the most wildfire action I think we've seen in the world, in the history of the world, I think. So about 30,000 households have been ordered to evacuate in Canada's British Columbia province, where nearly 400 wildfires are raging. Evacuation orders grew from covering 15,000 homes on Friday to at least 30,000 by Saturday evening, and another 36,000 homes are under evacuation alert. Canada is having its worst wildfire season on record, with at least 1,000 fires burning across the country, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center, and an entire capital city. They have like provinces in Canada, and they each have a capital city which has, a lot of people living in it, and this one capital city that is pretty much in the firing line, as it were, of this particular wildfire is called Yellowknife. And this is like a legit, I mean, it's not like a huge city, but still, this is a lot of people. Like, there's going to be 20,000 people who will need to evacuate this city. Like, this is like a census from 2016. So the population could even be even more than that in 2023. So but yeah, so that's the situation in Canada. And then over in Hawaii, at least 114 people have lost their lives in devastating Maui wildfires, as first responders are continuing to search for what people are estimating to be 1,000 missing people in the fire-ravaged town. Residents are reporting as well, I'm sure people have seen this, that investors and realtors are trying to capitalize on the wildfires by purchasing land from locals. So not even letting people grieve for lost loved ones. Most people know these wildfires have been going on for about a week or maybe a bit longer, but it's just, such a vile thing to do, where it's like, well, you lost your home, but we'll give you some money for it. It's like, and of course, people who live in Hawaii, like the indigenous people of Hawaii, are not going to take kindly to that. Like, this is just like, disaster neo-colonialism, like a new level of colonialism unlocked that is just so incredibly vile. So solidarity to the Hawaiian people, and don't go on. I mean, most people probably aren't going to go on vacation to Hawaii anymore, but don't go. That's that. So that is Hawaii, and because Hawaii is it's listed as an American place, even though we all know it's not. It's apparently being registered as America's deadliest wildfire in the last century. So that even goes for anything that's happened on North American soil. There are also desperate attempts. This is just something that I've noticed. There are desperate attempts to blame this on anything other than climate change, with a video circulating showing a power line hitting a tree and a camera refocusing, pointing in a completely different direction when it supposedly powers up again, and then showing the forest on fire. The reality of this is that if this were actually the case, the fire would have been much more controllable if the fire department were informed at that point. It also makes a really bad case for a utility company in charge of those lines and what they are doing to prevent such a thing occurring in general. So that's Hawaii, but wait, there's more. Spanish authorities ordered the evacuation of 4 villages on the Canary island of Tenerife on Wednesday after a fire broke out in a nature park surrounding the Mount Teide volcano. It comes after the Canary Islands were hit by a heat wave that left many areas bone dry, increasing the risk of wildfires. The amount of water over evaporation is something that you can also check out if you want to get really annoyed and upset about this whole situation. There are lots of stories you can find on the internet about how much water has all of a sudden become completely scarce all over places in the imperial periphery, and even some places in Europe. So yeah, you can check out a bit more of that if you have the time. Greek authorities are also having to deal with the some wildfires in Greece. They evacuated 8 villages near the northeastern border with Turkey due to a large summer wildfire burning out of control, whipped on by high winds. The fire service said more than 130 fighters assisted by 14 water-dropping planes and 3 helicopters were struggling to contain the blaze, and reinforcements were sent from other parts of the country. The forest fire broke out early Saturday near the village of Melia, east of the town of Alexandroupolis. So anyone listening in the future, this is the 20th of August. So we're talking yesterday, the 19th of August. And this also comes after the wildfires of Portugal last week, where around 800 personnel attended a fire near the southern town of Odemira overnight on Monday, with more than 1,400 people having to evacuate. So with all that doom and gloom, chat, it is important to remember that the world is not ending. These things are going to continue. What do wildfires cause? Well, death of trees. What does death of trees mean? Well, more carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. So this is only going to be furthering the speed at which climate disaster. I guess climate disaster is a nebulous term that we want to avoid. Various climate disasters are going to occur. It's gonna just compound the greenhouse gases, and so organize and mobilize. That's the ticket, right? Why else do you come here? Why else do you listen to the show? So that's it for the news that we've got for you this week.
Yep. I guess the main thing to say is that you can support the show on patreon.com/red_planet. Now, how can you do that, you're asking? Well, there are actually quite a few different ways to support the show. The first of them, it's a tiny, teeny little tier we like to call Sprite Mode. It only costs you £2 per month. And the description reads like this: get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. Benefits include the sacred and forbidden knowledge that you are helping the Red Planet team, early access to VODs, access to the Red Planet Discord, supporting us, of course. There is a Red Planet Discord, and we hang out in there. We share memes, secret memes that you can only see there. They aren't posted anywhere else. And they teach you how to do Kung Fu. So everyone who is in the Discord has seen the memes and can fight like a black belt, and anyone who is not, they haven't.
Just like Neo, yeah, absolutely.
They're not safe from Red Planet Discord users. Anyway, what about the next tier up, Tim?
So the next one, Goblin Mode, which I think is $10 US, but is $17.50 a month in New Zealand dollary dues.
That's right.
Everyone loves a goblin. We'll get a little goblin mode from time to time. Complete your gobology by going goblin mode with everything from Sprite Mode, a cool pack of Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only in places like that, access to exclusive Red Planet Discord hangouts, supporting us, and blah 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 blah. So the hangouts are a special thing. Like if you get in Sprite Mode, you get into the Discord, but we have all the higher tiers. We have little Discord hangouts where we'll just like hang out, watch a movie or some TV shows, or play games and just talk about it. The last one I did was a couple weeks back with were you there, Soph, or was it just me? Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was just me and Kira. I thought Soph was joining us, but it actually happened because there was an earlier time we were gonna do it, and we forgot to tell anyone about it. So it ended up just being me and Soph, like two people hanging out, and they were like, okay, let's do it again. And then the following week, me and Kira did it. And it was great. We watched 2 allegedly famous episodes of Star Trek that dealt with some ideological kind of little things that apparently, which according to Kira, kind of sum up a lot of what Star Trek is trying to do. Like asking the big questions that Star Trek was trying to do.
Yeah, that's how I pick those ones out.
Yeah, which was really fun because we got to talk about not just what was actually happening in the show, but there was a lot of stuff in there that both of us were talking about, like kind of like context from the time or from other things that even inspired those episodes. And it was really cool, just like really informal, just chill, have a chat. And it was cool to learn some more about Star Trek because I'm a bit of
I really hope I can make the next one because I'm a huge Trekkie and like I would love to chat that stuff through.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's just a glimpse at what happens here in these Discord hangouts. What about what's the next tier, Mule? What's after Goblin Mode?
Oh, Tim, it's Beast Mode. That's £17 or $25. And I think how much? How much is it in Aotearoa? And
There is
I'm saying it wrong. I'm saying
there's
it
no
wrong.
officially recognized Aotearoa
It's true.
currency. There have been former attempts. If there is an old guy up north, he might have passed away now, that was printing Ngāpui dollars and driver's
Amazing.
licenses and passports, and
That's
it's
so
kind of
good.
legendary. Like, I wish that I had some, just as like a kind of weird curiosity. But no, it's $34.50 New Zealand.
$34 in New Zealand, and sorry, $34.50 and $20 in the States, I'm being told. Holy shit, are you actually gonna go beast mode? Well, then we can offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers and pin badges. Yeah, that's right, pin badges. Wear your excellent new Red Planet pin badge literally everywhere. It's completely cool and good to do. But what if you just like your brain is so sick and you are just completely you're really like intense about Red Planet. So what can those people do? Surely we can help them. Surely there's something that we can do.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand. A lot of people think there's no helping these kinds of people. A lot of people think that these people have gone too far. It's not going to be possible to do anything about them because they're too much of a sicko. But luckily there is a tier for them. It's called sicko mode, and it costs £85 a month or $100 if you are irreparably sick for Red Planet and the only cure is more Red Planet. Well, you can make more Red Planet happen by going patreon.com/red_planet and pledging at the highest tier, sicko mode. And if you support us this much, we can only reasonably offer you everything from the lower tiers and a very special thank you message at the end of every stream. Now, how does that thank you message look, you're wondering? Just like this. Thank you, sickos. JBP, Narrow and Starfire, Queen Pib. You're sick.
We love you.
Sick little sick pups.
Sick little puppies. Thank you so much for supporting our show.
Yeah.
Also,
and
go on, Soph. Sorry.
Well, is there any? Okay, Mule. Is there any other way you can support the show besides Patreon? Is what I was. Yes.
You can buy a t-shirt. It's really cool. Oh, it's mercenarycreative.com. Head over there and get our Queer Existence is Resistance t-shirt. Literally created by the entirety of Red Planet. Everyone had something to do with it.
That's true.
Amazing art by
I
Sophie.
laid out I laid out my lighter flagging hanky and bottle of poppers on the floor and took the picture that was the template.
Oh, you did. That's what it was. It was a picture. Right.
Yeah, we all like did a little bit and we progressively made it together. And after another long amount of time, we'll probably make another design. And there'll be more merch.
Tim's got his own. Look at that. Oh my God, Tim. He's got one. That's
I have
so
one too,
crazy.
But I'm not in this room.
It's all right. It's on the screen if you can see it. If you're watching
Yeah.
us on YouTube or Twitch. Amazing. So please go ahead and support Red Planet by getting our merch. It's really cool. And it'll probably, I don't know, it'll probably get you in with the polycule, to be honest.
Definitely would.
Yeah, for sure. So, with all that in mind, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you cannot handle, another week without Red Planet, then I don't know. So, where can people find you?
Oh, if someone were to go around collecting up the individual pieces of Red Planet, like little gemstones to slip into their Red Planet gauntlet so that they could snap their fingers and make it so there's Red Planet all the time. They could find me by going to linktree / Sophie from Mars, all one word, and all of my links are there. I will probably it should be up to date, but I'll just check over it shortly because I do need to make some adjustments to it. I'm on Tumblr, I'm on Twitch, I stream when I feel like it. There's no schedule. I can't help you, sorry. I also make YouTube video essays. I just made one recently that I spent 2 years making and finally released. It's called The World Is Not Ending, and it's about how the world, get this, it's not ending.
Whoa.
I'm working on one about AI. Hopefully will be out next week. Which, if you want your Red Planet fill, I'm gonna be away week after next. So if you need more Sophie, especially to get your full Red Planet team, now would be a good time to go over to my patreon.com/Sophie from Mars and see all of the bonus content you can get there. I actually just had a chat with November Caldwell Kelly from Trash Future Pod, Kill James Bond, and There's Your Problem Pod, and uploaded the chat about AI that we had to my Patreon today, and I'll be using a little bit of that in my AI video too. But yeah, there's behind the scenes content that only patrons can get, so check that all out. And if you want to get more of our absent host Kira, she also has a link tree, linktree.ee/Kira chats, and we can't talk about what's on there. Can we, chat?
No.
We know why.
No. And that's how you know
Naughty.
it's good.
And that's why you know it's good. But what about our present hosts, such as Tim?
You can find me on Twitch and on YouTube as Conquest of Dread, but you can find me over on Twitter as Dread Conquest. Yeah, I haven't been streaming too much. Well, I've been away for a couple of weeks, but I might do some streams next month, I'm thinking, because it is going to be Twitch is like there's Twitch ANZ do like a Maori language month sort of thing, and I did a bunch of streams for it last year, and they just emailed me about getting in on that again this year. So I might do that. Might do some streams. I don't know what I'll play. I'm just finishing up Yakuza 0 at the moment, which is very good, but I got given Baldur's Gate 3 for my birthday, so
Wow.
maybe we'll do
Nice,
a little
me
bit
too.
of that. Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
we can compare characters.
I was thinking of maybe I'll play it offline, like just for myself, and then maybe I'll do a like modded to shit like stream. So you know, we'll see. We'll find some good. We'll get on Nexus. We'll cruise through the adult tab. We'll see what's going on.
Now
But
you're
what
talking my
about
language.
yeah? What about Mule? What's going on? Where can we find you?
I've got a link tree as well. It's linktree.ee/DJ Mule, DJMUEL for those listening. I got a Patreon on there. I got a Twitch. I got a YouTube. I got a VOD channel. I got a TikTok. I got an Instagram. I got a Twitter, but I got banned for saying something that everyone believes in is not even that bad. But I also got a Blue Sky, which is not on the link tree. I just actually went on there to actually start setting that up. So
I believe you made some kind of comment about the British world leader who started the Iraq War, and something gruesome that happens in the original Fargo film.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like no comment. Like I think like any kind of like people who want to speculate on like what my crimes were and how long I should go to prison for it, you know, whatever, like, you know, that's just up to you, but like I just said the truth. And that's that. So anyway, check me out.
Meanwhile, over on Blue Sky, free speech is actually legal, as is comedy. You know, that's on Blue Sky. You can say things like the thickened genetic runoff from Tony Blair and Keir Starmer's cloning process that formed Wes Streeting was the worst thing to happen to humanity, and you don't get banned. You know,
It's true.
That's allowed.
It's true. You don't get banned just for saying very normal leftist ideas, and that's that. That's that. Blue Sky is the place. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Absolutely incredible. And thanks to our guest, as per usual. If you're with us in the Twitch chat, we're going to be raiding Nicotine. Join us because she does some really cool streams. She's really fun and funny and good. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Goodbye. Solidarity.
Bye.
Bye.